We're back again with psychology with Mr. Densberger. That's me. You might also know me as the Wolverine, at least my inner true self. All right, moving on. We are on intelligence, and for this book it's chapter 11. I have to change it in the future. We will see. And I just wanted to show you some things here. I have listed the chapter objectives. Thought that might help you. There's 2 slides here. There's 11 of them. Go through those before and after you study. Make sure you understand everything it's asking you to understand. If you don't understand something, please ask me. And then as well, here's the rest of it. Now this also will correlate to the chapter outline, which I also put on here, which is at the front of your book, or your chapter, your book. It's in your book, but it's at the front of every chapter. So those overlap a lot. So you might want to look at all that stuff. It will help you study, so in case you haven't done that before. So let's get on with it. Intelligence. The question here is, do we have an inborn general mental capacity known as intelligence? And if so, can we quantify this capacity as a meaningful number? And we've been trying to figure that out for years. And most of you know this as IQ, and we'll explain what that is in a moment. I guess the question is, there's a test out there, there's several tests, and we have done an okay job at trying to pinpoint how to identify those who are in need of extra help or those who are at the extreme end of, I guess, outstanding or excellent, beyond normal intelligence. Okay. As far as the rest of us in the middle, large middle area, it gets to be a little more gray as to how effective intelligence tests are as far as correlating with certain successes in life. Okay, but I'll try to address all those. So what is it? So intelligence, basically in all cultures, every culture will define it differently, but is the ability to learn from experience, solve problems, and use our knowledge to adapt to new situations. So that makes a lot of sense. Each culture has its own set of problems. Okay, in this modern world, Western world we live in, somebody who can do high-level abstract thinking. I don't know. I'm trying to think of like an astrophysicist, or if you watch any of the science fiction films, people who can quickly do mathematical calculations, where time matters if you're in space, those type of things. Obviously, a very high level of intelligence is needed, because if you can't do it, you die. But if you are in a culture that is basically, an island culture somewhere in the Pacific that really survives on basically fishing or something like that, and intelligence will be defined a bit differently because they're not really looking at things the same way the rest, a culture like ours would. Okay. All right. In research studies, intelligence is whatever the intelligence test measures. So when you're doing research, you can define intelligence as to whatever you want, and this is where I start to lose kids. It's why intelligence tests are sort of discounted by many people, because you can make it be whatever you want it to be. Okay. Now, in the case of our world, it tends to be school smarts. Okay, which can frustrate people, because a lot of people feel, hey, I'm intelligent and I don't particularly score super well on this one test that you've come up with, but I don't feel like I'm somehow handicapped in the world. And you're absolutely right. It's just that when it comes to being able to measure people, the best source we have, the best way we've come up with, is to use all the school stuff you learn. And it's interesting because school smarts are good while you're in school, not necessarily anywhere else. Okay, so and we'll talk about that. Stanford, Binet, is what we basically use in this country. And you can, from the reading, you'll see that it was a test that was originally started in France to help identify those kids who are struggling in the school system. It was never intended to be a test that was meant to be used to sort of rank everybody. Okay, it was supposed to find those kids who are struggling, but it's been kind of carried over to all kinds of uses, whether we want it to be or not. So what tends to happen a lot is scientists discover something, and you'll notice this as you go through your life with all kinds of different subjects. Scientists discover something, they develop it, and they have one or several ideas of what it's going to be and how effective it will, how useful it will be to mankind. Then sort of politicians come in and say, oh, that's cool, but we could switch it and manipulate it, and then we'll use it this way. When the scientists would say, that's not what I intended, and that really you're not using the science well. But scientists don't control, society. Scientists are a part of society. Politicians control a great deal of society. So you just got to understand why it's being used the way it is today, because more or less the system is trying to organize itself, and the best way it can see to organize itself is to use this intelligence test that was made up by somebody several years ago for a very different purpose. And then this intelligence test, I shouldn't say tested, but this formula has been changed gradually over time, and it's eventually come to being called the Stanford-Binet. It is the mental age that you are over your chronological age times 100 to get a positive number, okay? And that equals your IQ. And so it's sort of saying where you actually are in your thinking ability over what your age is, and then you go from there, multiply times 100. So it could be something like if you're a kid who's 6, but you're able to, but your mental age is actually, hey, you're actually a 12-year-old. So a 12 over 6, okay, and when you do the division there, so it's a 12 over 6. So yeah, I'm doing you can tell where my mental age is. 6 goes into 12 2 times 100, that's 200 IQ. So that's way over, okay? So that's a huge IQ. So that's all they're coming up with, and they have a series of tests for figuring that out. Okay. All right, now, psychologists believe that intelligence is a concept and not a thing. What we're trying to get to here is getting you to understand it's a concept. We have a tendency to make it a thing. IQ is like we just did personality before. It's not a trait. It's not something you can put down there with, oh, I'm an extrovert and I also have a high IQ. That's not part of your personality, okay? It is a concept. It's an idea of what, it's like gravity. It's a concept, but it's not something that actually, well, I shouldn't say it shouldn't exist. It does exist. We can see it represented in the world, but it's not something that you can, I guess, touch, just like intelligence isn't, okay? And we have this thing with reification where we call viewing an abstract immaterial concept as if it were a concrete thing. Again, I'm talking about something that doesn't really exist, and trying to make something out of it that it's not. So all you have to remember is it is something that you're supposed to use in the abstract. Controversy. Despite general agreement among psychologists about the nature of intelligence, 2 controversies remain. Okay, is intelligence a single overall ability, or is it several specific abilities? And there's 2 big theories on this. Actually, there's several theories, I shouldn't say, but in the world of IQ itself, there's 2 big ways of looking at it, okay? With modern neuroscience techniques, can we locate and measure intelligence within the brain? So now we're trying to figure out, with all these new finagled machines that can dive into our brain, can we locate intelligence? Is there a way to figure it out? Literally as if it was a hard science, as if, hey, well, if you have this chemical in your brain, you are going to be smarter than this person, or something along those lines, okay? And we're not sure we can do that yet. All right, have you ever thought that since people's mental abilities are so diverse, it may not be justifiable to label those abilities with only one word, intelligence, okay? And I would definitely say yes. It's a slippery slope to say that, you know, because somebody doesn't fit into this perfect little box that we create, we somehow say, hey, well, you're not intelligent, or you are not as intelligent as somebody else, okay? If you're watching this film, by the way, you're pretty intelligent, so keep that in mind. Don't discount yourself. You may speculate that diverse abilities represent different kinds of intelligence. How can you test this idea? So it's kind of hard to figure out. So let's look at the first one, general intelligence. This is the idea that this idea G, that's why there's that little G there, okay? Here, okay, boom, boom. It exists, the idea that general intelligence exists comes from the work of Charles Spearman. And I want to remind everybody, you seem to be having trouble as to, oh, I didn't realize I should know who these people were. I'm underlining them. You need to know who a lot of these guys are just so you keep it straight as to who came up with what theory, okay? So Charles Spearman, he came up with, who helped develop, and he also developed factor analysis approach in statistics, okay, which basically G is saying there is no breakdown of intelligence. It is this one concept, and your G is either at this point, this point, this point, okay? But when you get into asking the question of, does that really feel right, you know, and a lot of people say no. A lot of people don't like that. That doesn't make any sense. There's so many aspects to the word intelligence. Just like when you see this picture here, athleticism, okay? When you hear somebody's a good athlete, there are so many different ways of putting that. They could be fast at running straight ahead. They could be very good at starting and stopping, jumping, catching, throwing, hitting. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. And to say that there's only one way we're going to define what a good athlete is nobody would do that. But for some reason with intelligence, we do that. So keep that in mind. Okay? All right, he proposed general intelligence as a link to many clusters that can be analyzed by factor analysis. So he says there's this statistical measure of figuring out how people develop their G. So for example, people who do well on vocabulary examinations do well on paragraph comprehension examinations. A cluster that helps define verbal intelligence. So this whole thing is called verbal intelligence. Other factors include a spatial ability factor or a reasoning ability factor, and these all add up to your G, okay? Later psychologists analyzed Thurston's data and found a weak relationship between these clusters, suggesting some evidence of a G factor, okay? Some, okay? Weak. Now, when we get into factor analysis, oh, I skipped one. I apologize, I just skipped one. All right, let me go back. All right, now, I haven't talked about Thurston. All right, so Thurston, a critic of Spearman, analyzed his subjects not on a single scale of general intelligence, but on 7 clusters of primary mental abilities, including. So the following 7, what we're talking about here is they're still saying it's IQ, they're still saying it's intelligence, but he said, no, we got to break it down, and you have several sub-factors that you could be better or worse at different things at, like word fluency, verbal comprehension, spatial ability, understanding where things are in relation to one another, perceptual speed, how fast you process, numerical ability, ability to use numbers, inductive reasoning, okay, ability to take in information and induce from it an answer, okay, and then memory, your ability to store stuff in your head, either short-term or long-term, okay, and they're saying that it's not single, he's saying it's not single, it's several of these. And so we're kind of getting into the beginning of thinking of moving away in a more modern sense, of G. G is just this thing. Either you got G, you got a high G, low G. Now what we're saying is, well, some people are better at comprehension than numerical ability, okay? I've always been. I've been very good reader, wordsmith, things like that. But my ability with numbers I'm not horrific, but I am by no means an engineer, okay? And then spatial abilities always made me laugh. When I was in the Army, I was terrible with map reading and just horrible. And I always laughed because I was always like, I'll get to the battle after it's over. You know, once it's over, I'll show up. Hey, what's going on? All right. So and then here I was saying that they found a weak relationship between these clusters. So they're saying they do suggest some evidence of a G factor, but there's also some there's evidence that it breaks down. So it's a very gray area. If you're feeling like he's not really giving me much of an answer here, yeah, I'm not. I'm just telling you, learn these definitions for what they are and understand that intelligence, as we have academically tried to break it down today, we're not at a sort of an ending point, okay? And I'm going to stop there for this video.